Hello, I am Anvi Khemka, an economics postgraduate. The case study that I will be discussing in this video made up a portion of my final semester thesis. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. To give a broad overview, this case study uses machine learning techniques to understand the pattern of AppCap usage of people who are in the age group of 18 to 30 and reside in the Greater Kolkata area. The analysis was done on primary data that had been collected by means of a digitally circulated survey. Attempts had been made to collect secondary data. Officials of a popular AppCap service provider had been contacted as well. But as had been anticipated, the required data was confidential in nature. On the other hand, the data that these companies had provided publicly hadn't been deemed useful for this particular project. Because of these reasons, there hadn't been any secondary data that could have been used for the purpose of analysis. This was absolutely fine, as making a new survey altogether allows questions to be tailored to meet the specific needs of the project. This makes the subsequent modeling easier, as the information collected doesn't have to be processed multiple times to arrive at a data set which is relevant. Another reason why the survey route was chosen was because it allows interesting questions to be asked which might not have been asked before. It was ensured that the survey was short and non-tedious. In fact, a few respondents even reached out to say that they enjoyed answering the questions. This is very important because it is an indication that the answers filled in were genuine. The questions asked in the survey could be categorized into two parts. The first set of questions were asked to get an understanding of the demographics of the respondents in terms of age, sex, education, occupation, marital status, family income, personal income, etc. Here both family and personal income had been included because the age group that is being studied was quite young. Most of the respondents were expected to be students or young professionals, implying that they either don't have a personal income yet, or maybe to some measure might still be relying on the families for financial support. Because of this, family income was assumed to be of some importance. The respondents were asked whether they used AppCaps or not, and were asked to select the reasons for the same. These questions had to be compulsorily answered by all the respondents. The second part of the survey focused on people who used AppCaps. To understand the respondents' dependence on these services, questions were asked about the usage frequency, response time of the AppCaps, and what factors they took into account while booking a ride, their responses to surge pricing, along with the length of association with the service. As can be made out, the first section deals with understanding the background of the respondents, while the second section deals more with the customer behavior and expectations from the service provided. A total of 734 responses were recorded. For the purposes of modeling, it is advised to have a higher number of data points. To put it simply, more data points implies more information in hand, which would help the model in predicting results more accurately. Nevertheless, despite the constraints faced, the analysis was done on the available data points. Exploratory data analysis was carried out, which consisted of both univariate and bivariate analysis. The former helped in understanding variables individually, while the latter was used to check the relationship between variables. This helps in forming the hypothesis for the study. For exploratory data analysis, variables were studied visually through bar charts and pie charts. Thanks to Google Forms, the platform that had been selected for circulating the survey, there hadn't been any need to make separate visualization for univariate analysis, as the response collection sheet already had pie charts or graphs automatically made for each question. However, bivariate analysis, Matplotlib in Python was used for visualization purposes. A lot of observations were made after the exploratory analysis. Instead of reading out all the points, I would just move over the coming few slides and request you to pause the video and carefully read them. This would help you in absorbing the information better. The objective of the model of the case study is to predict whether a person's usage of AppCab has negatively affected the usage of other means of transport or not. The variables initially chosen to build the model gave information about the respondents in relation to their age, sex, education level, occupation, part-time jobs, marital status, presence of any special needs, personal income, family income, public transport usage, private vehicle usage, app bus usage, AppCab usage frequency, response to search pricing, time taken for the app cab to arrive, duration of usage of app cab services, and level of satisfaction with the service. In accordance to the objective of the model, data collected from only those respondents who used app cabs is utilized. However, before we begin modeling, it is extremely important to clean the data. This is done to ensure data reliability and consistency. The data is checked for outliers and missing values. There weren't any missing values in this case as the questions couldn't be left unanswered in the survey. It should also be pointed out that there wasn't much to be done in regards to cleaning the data as the data had been collected from one source. It is usually when the data is collected from multiple sources that the possibility of errors and inconsistency in data arises. To give another illustration of how the data was cleaned, take a look at the public modes transport, which has been highlighted in yellow. If you can see the pointer, this is the column that I am talking about. The portion of Excel sheet is actually the raw data that has been exported from the Google Forms into the Excel file. 6 choices of public transport had been provided and the respondents had to select the ones that they used. The resultant column contained the number of all modes that the respondents used, separated by a comma. For R to be able to make sense of this, it was necessary to make the 6 separate columns for each of the modes and accordingly populate them with yes and no. R is the software that was chosen to conduct the analysis. It is to be noted that the data just needs to be segregated over here. There are no dummy variables being formed. There is a distinction. Dummy variables are basically assigned numerical values to categorical variables. Another characteristic of the data set is that all the variables, just like the dependent variable, are categorical in nature, including both personal and family income, which were categorized in terms of classes and not exact numerical values. However, there was no creation of dummy variables in this case, as R automatically creates them when the data is fed into the software. Coming back to the problem in hand, using a combination of Excel functions, the 6 newly formed columns was populated in a way R could understand it. This is the code that had been used. As you can see, search, if number, if, these were the functions that had been utilized. And now you can see how all the information in this particular column has been segregated into the following column. These particular columns hadn't been there before. They had been made manually. So using Excel functions, you can actually make your task a lot easier. After the Excel file is imported in R in CSV format, as can be made out from the very first code in the screenshot, we proceed to the following stages. A sanity check is done before processing the data to ensure that the data is suitable for analyzing. It is a good idea to do a quick summary of the data and check whether the data types of the variables are correct or not. If the data types are incorrect, say the data category is recognized as a string instead of date, then it might pose a problem during analysis. The data types would have to be changed if that's the case. So definitely running a summary would ease the job. Finally, using sapply, the number of missing values can be found out. The is.na helps in spotting the missing values while the sum totals them. Using regression analysis was deemed the best method to go about with the analysis. The already mentioned variables were taken to be the independent variables, while negative change in usage of other modes of transport was taken to be the dependent variable. Since the dependent variable concerned was categorical in nature, logistic regression was chosen as the method of analysis. Here the y variable can either be yes or no, making it binary. Binary logistic regressions are very similar to the linear counterparts in terms of use and interpretation, and the only real difference here is the type of dependent variable they use. In a linear regression, the dependent variable or what you are trying to predict is continuous. So when we are interpreting the binary logistic regression, we are no longer talking about how our independent variables predict a score, but how they predict which of the two groups of the binary dependent variable they end up falling in, which over here would be 0 or 1. Later in the slides, the distinction between the two classes that I've just spoken about would be made a lot more clear. Since a few data points had been removed from the 734 data points that had been collected because those people represented the respondents who did not use AppCats, we were ultimately left with 648 points. However, the model will not be built upon all these 648 points. The data set will be divided into two parts, train and test, in a ratio of 8:2. It is the trained data that will be utilized to build the model. This particular code actually helps in splitting the data. As you can see, the ratio selected over here is 0.8. Here data 1 is the original data set, while data to train is the train data set and data to test is the test data set. Here, these two new data sets are made from a pre-existing data set that had been imported in R. Separating data into training and test sets is an important part of evaluating the performance of a machine learning model. The training data set is used to fit the model. The second subset is called the test data set, as its purpose is to test or evaluate the model that has been fit using the training data set. This is done by feeding the inputs of the test data set to the model to see what the predictions come out to be, and then checking those predictions by comparing them with the actual values which are already known to see how far the predictions have been made correctly. This is how we expect to use the model in practice. That is, to fit it on an available data set with known inputs and outputs, then make predictions on new examples in the future where we not have the expected output or target variables in hand to make a comparison. Typically, when data is separated into training and test data, the smaller portion of the data is used for testing. This logically follows as more the number of data points the model sees, the more accurately it will predict after being built. Another important consideration is that rows are assigned to the train and test data sets randomly. This is done to ensure that the data sets are a representative sample of the original data set, which in turn should be a representative sample of the observations from the bigger problem domain. It should also be remembered that the train test procedure is appropriate only when there is a sufficiently large number of data points available. Like I've already mentioned, the more the number of data points, the better it is all around. So yes, whenever making a survey, circulating a survey, do try to make the survey available to as many people as possible. Before trying different iterations of the model with the trained data, the information values for all the x variables are calculated so that it can be determined which x variables have a good separation power over the y variables. The separation in this context refers to separating the yeses from the nos. That is, separating the people who started using less of other modes of transport after using app caps from those who did not. All the variables that had an IV of less than 0.02 were discarded, as the variables with IVs in this particular range do not have any separation power over the variable. Various models using the iterations of the leftover variables were made before deciding upon the best model. The selecting criteria were the p-values of the individual variables of the model and the AIC value of the different models. AIC estimates the relative amount of information lost by a given model. The less information the model loses, the higher the quality of the model. Thus, a lower AIC value indicates a better fit. The models where all the variables were significant, that is, had an impact on the target variable, and with the lowest possible AIC were chosen. The equation of the chosen model that was ultimately selected was, as you can see, the one in bold. There are 4 variables that came out to be significant. They are frequency of app cap usage, which was every day, frequency of app cap usage, which was often, service review, which was satisfactory, and service review, which was very satisfied. This is the regression output. As you can see, the same 4 variables which I just mentioned came out to be significant. Their corresponding p-values can also be seen. One of the assumptions of logistic model is the absence of multicollinearity. Multicollinearity refers to the situation where 2 or more predictor variables in a multiple logistic regression models are highly correlated. Presence of multicollinearity weakens the statistical power of the model. Also, in its presence, the p-value stops being reliable in identifying the individual variables that are statistically significant. So, variable inflation factor, the VIF function, was used to check the multicollinearity, which gave the following output. Since all the values were below 2, it was safe to assume that there was no multicollinearity in the model. Once the model development steps are complete, then the next step is model validation, which deals with ensuring the accuracy and robustness of the model. It is basically checking that the data does not conflict with the assumptions made by the model. It is part of the overall model development process and not something that comes separately towards the end. Goodness of fit in logistic regression attempts to get at how well a model fits the data. The null hypothesis of the chi-square test states that the degree of separation provided by a predictive model is no better than that provided by a random classifier. Here the p-value for the test came out to be 0, making it easy for us to reject the null hypothesis that the model built was no better than the random classifier. Also, the Horschel-Lemshaw goodness of fit test gave the model a p-value of 1, because of which we could not reject the null hypothesis that there was no distinction between the observed values and the predicted values of the model. R-square statistic can be found out for logistic regression as well, but it is almost always rather low, since the observed values need to be either 0 or 1, but predicted values are always in between these extremes. The model has already been fit and all the fitted values have been calculated. It is noticed that the predictions made by the model lie in the range of 0 to 1. As you can see in the screenshot, the R console screenshot, the predictions for the first 34 variables have been made and none of them are 0 or 1. They are 0.5, 0.3, 0.8, but there is no prediction which is either 0 or 1. But binary logistic regression is a classification algorithm which assigns observations to be into 2 discrete classes, 0 and 1. So how do we go around this problem? The bridge between the predictions in a continuous range to outputs falling in 2 distinct classes is formed by the sigmoid function. In machine learning, The sigmoid function is used to map predictions to probabilities. The only thing required is to set a threshold for the prediction values in the range of 0 to 1. For this particular model, the threshold value was chosen to be 0.5. This would imply that the prediction values falling below 0.5 would be assigned to class 0. That is, it would be considered that the person hasn't changed their usage of other modes of transport after using app caps, while values above 0.5 would be assigned to class 1. That is, it would be assumed that the person has changed the usage of other modes of transport because of app caps. The very first line, the very first code after the matrix comment, as you can see in the screenshot, sets the threshold value, the 0.5 value. Lastly, we move on to assessing the model performance or its predictive power on the basis of the obtained fitted values. The outcomes for each observation along with their fitted values are used to make a 2 by 2 table called the confusion matrix. Evaluation of a classification algorithm performance is measured by the confusion matrix, which contains information about the actual and the predicted class. In the slide, you can see the bread class that was formed in the very first code because of setting a threshold value of 0.5. The values of this bread class is actually compared to the actual values of the observations that have been collected. As you can see, this is the syntax of a confusion matrix. TP refers to true positive. This implies that the predicted value matches the actual value, hence true, and that the value is positive. Tn refers to true negative. This implies that the predicted value matched the actual value and that the value was negative. False positive refers to FP over here, also known as the type 1 error. This implies that the predicted value did not match the actual value and that the actual value had been negative but the predicted value was positive. False negative is given by Fn, also known as the type 2 error. This implies that the predicted value did not match the actual value and that the actual value had been positive while the predicted value had been negative. The accuracy of the model is given by the formula which has been highlighted in bold. However, it is not wise to rely on the accuracy metric when there is a class imbalance in the data set. For a data set, if the event to be predicted belongs to the minority class with an occurrence falling below 5%, then the event would be called a rare event. Unfortunately, classifier algorithms like logistic regression have a bias towards classes which have number of instances, which have a higher number of instances and tend to only predict the majority class data. The features of the minority classes are treated as noise and are often ignored. As a result of this, there is a high probability of misclassification of the minority class as compared to the majority class. In our particular case, 43.2% of the people have not changed their usage of other means of transport, while 56.8% have. So there is no class imbalance in this particular data set. However, in the situation that there would have been a class imbalance, the class distribution would have to be balanced by either undersampling, which is randomly eliminating majority class observations, or by random oversampling, which increases the number of instances in the minority class by randomly replicating them to present a higher representation of the minority class in the sample. A random classifier has an accuracy rate of 50%. So if a model has to be built then this accuracy rate has to be improved upon. Otherwise, making a model would serve no actual purpose. If the accuracy rate for both train and test data are around 50%, then the model is underfitted. The model can be seen as a straight line, which is too oversimplified. This means that the model is too generalized to be capable of separating the two classes. Sometimes the accuracy rate of the trained data is really high, while that of the test data is really low. The accuracy here is that the problem here is that the model has become too convoluted and has customized itself to the trained data, because of which it cannot adapt to a new data set, which is the test data here. This is a case of overfitting. Such a scenario also renders the model completely useless. As can be understood, a common ground has to be formed between the two so that the model is appropriately fit. Still, accuracy cannot be taken as the sole metric to determine the quality of a model. It should be noted that referring to the accuracy rate is ideal only when the data sets are symmetric. That is, the counts of false positives and false negatives are close, and also when these both have similar costs, which might not be the case. The cost factor depends on a case-by-case situation. For example, the cost of false negatives is higher than false positives in cases of detection of an illness, because declaring a false negative result might result in long-term damages, while declaring a false positive would only result in expenses incurred due to additional tests. In some cases, the cost of false positive is more than that of false negative, like in the case of deciding whether to imprison a person suspected of committing a crime. Here a false negative would result in a criminal loose on the streets, while a false positive would result in an innocent person being locked up. Naturally, the cost of the latter is a lot heavier. There are also other metrics that can be consulted in accordance with the objective of the model. Some of them are precision, sensitivity, and specificity. Their formulae are highlighted in bold. Precision should be used when the objective is to capture true positives more accurately, and when higher false positive is a bigger problem than higher false negative. Recall should be consulted if the cost of false negative is higher than that of false positive. Precision is how sure you are of your true positive, while recall is how sure you are that you are not missing out on any positive. Specificity should be used when the objective is to capture true negatives more accurately, and when the cost of false positive is higher than that of false negative. To see which metric makes the most sense in the context of this case study, the reason why the model has been built has to be considered. Which party would this model benefit the most? The answer is the AppCap service providing companies. Every company wants to generate more profit. One way of doing so is by generating more revenue. For these companies, higher revenue can be generated if higher car rides are booked. There are two ways to go about this. One, expand the existing client base, or two, increase the number of rides booked by existing client base. For AppCap service providing companies, route 2 is easier, because in the first case the company would have to extensively study the population not availing their services, and after discovering the reasons for the same, target individual segments differently. But in the second case, thanks to this model, the companies are made aware of the factors which would cause their clients to make a bigger switch from the other modes of transport to AppCaps. Since they are already in touch with their clients through their phone applications, they can promote the switch over through relevant promotions formulated after considering the variables which came significant. The four significant variables have positive relation with the dependent variable. So if the model is to be interpreted in brief, then it could be said that among AppCap users, the people who have opted to use AppCaps quite frequently and are also quite satisfied with the service were found to change the pattern of usage of other modes of transport in favor of AppCaps. There are many ways in which the companies can make use of the result. One such way could be offering special discounts to people if they use AppCaps for all 5 weekdays to promote increased usage of the services. But it is important that these discount codes are received by only those people who still have scope for making a bigger switch to AppCaps. Those people are being exclusively identified through this model. That is, the company data cannot be relied on to predict which client still has a higher scope of using AppCaps. If the discount codes were received by people who are already using AppCaps to its optimum, then there would be a loss in revenue as lesser fare would be paid for the same number of rides hailed. This implies that we need to minimize the number of false negatives, which refers to customers who are already using the services to its maximum but have been classified as clients who still have scope to use it more. The cost of false negatives is higher than that of false positives because the former, as just explained, would lead to a loss in already secured revenue, while the latter, which could be a case of mistargeting, would lead to a loss of potential revenue. So the metric that should be emphasized by judging this model is sensitivity. For this model, threshold has already been set at 0.5. However, the same model can be tried with different threshold values in the range of 0 to 1. This would result in different confusion matrices and hence different metric scores, including sensitivity and specificity of the model. There would logically be some threshold values that show better model performance depending on which between the sensitivity and specificity metric is prioritized. Instead of generating countless confusion matrices and metrics, a scatter plot between sensitivity and specificity is generated to give a visual representation of which threshold is the best for any given case study. The plot gives the ROC curve, which is an evaluation metric for binary classification models. The area under the ROC curve provides an overall measure of it and of the model by measuring the ability of a classifier to distinguish between the two binary classes. It is used as a summary of the ROC curve. The higher the AUC, the better is the performance of model in distinguishing between positive and negative classes. When the AUC score is 1, then the classifier is able to perfectly distinguish between all positive and the negative classes and negative class points correctly. If the AUC value is 0, then the classifier built would be predicting all negatives as positives and all positives as negatives. When AUC falls in the range of 0.5 to 1, there is a high chance that the classifier will be able to distinguish the positive class values from the negative class values. This follows from the fact that the classifier detects more number of true positives and true negatives than false positives and false negatives. When the AUC is 0.5, then the classifier is not able to distinguish between positive and negative class points. So either the classifier is predicting random class or constant class for all the data points available. As already mentioned, the threshold has been set at 0.5. Now codes were written to find out the confusion matrices and the respective metrics for both the train and the test data. The first picture shows the codes written for the test data. Here it can be seen how the formula of the accuracy rate is being defined. The second picture shows the global environment of the model, where a few metric values of both test and train data can be seen. This is the outcome of running all the codes, and these are the confusion matrices and the value of the metrics obtained. On the basis of these values, we will be judging the performance of the model, whether it is helpful, whether it is worse than a random classifier or better than a random classifier. These are the ROC curves that have been obtained for both the train and the test data. Now, conclusions of the model performance can be stated on the basis of the values already obtained. First, the accuracy rates of both the models are in the neighborhood of 65%. This tells us two things. A. The model is better than the random classifier, which has an accuracy rate of 50%. So the model is not underfitted. B. Both the accuracy rates are close in value for both the data sets. Since the accuracy rate of the trained data is not significantly higher than that of the test data, the model is not overfitted. Second, the sensitivity metric, which was a metric of importance for this model, was above 75% for both data sets. Specificity in the meantime hovered around 50%. This means that false negatives are less than false positive, just how it was desired. Now, usually sensitivity and specificity go in opposite directions. There's a trade-off between the two. So, a low value of specificity, at least in this particular case, should not be a case of contemplation. Third, the AUC for both is around 0.7, which lies between 0.5 and 1, which implies that the classification of positives and negatives is higher in the model than that in a random classifier for any metric, for any threshold that might have been chosen. That's an average outlook, which was given by the ROC curve. So we can determine that the model is acceptable. Now, on the basis of the findings of the model, recommendations can be made to AppCap service providing companies. First, the targeted discount codes have already been spoken about earlier. This offer makes sense as high usage frequency had come significant in the model. Second, another way the number of rights can be increased is by trying to establish a culture in which people use AppCap services more frequently. This can be done by providing a special type of carpooling services for people in the workforce. Making people switch from using their private vehicles or public transport while commuting to or from work to AppCabs should be seen as the main objective. For this purpose, first areas with higher concentration of workplaces should be identified, and then the commuting options available in those areas should be studied. There also might be a need to invest in different types of vehicles before launching these services. Third, the other two variables that had come significant implied that the desired switch would be obtained if the existing clients have normal to high satisfaction levels with the service. Companies can work towards customer satisfaction in various ways, such as improving driver behavior, keeping the cabs in order, that is the physical condition of the cabs should be maintained, ensuring the services are prompt and that there are no bugs in the associated mobile applications, maintaining a fixed number of AppCabs available at any given time so that there is no scarcity, which is usually the main cause behind surge pricing. Lastly, another way in which the number of rides can be increased is by entering into partnership with the city's existing ambassador cab drivers and integrating them into the system. However, this would be a complicated and long process, and companies might not benefit from it in the initial years. There would also be a first mover advantage involved, but like it is said, the higher the risk involved, the bigger would be the reward at the end. So this is again a recommendation that might be considered. With this, we come to the end of the case study. I hope that you found it interesting and are now more intrigued to use machine learning techniques to come up with innovative solutions to problems that are both overt and covert. Thank you for your patience. Goodbye.